Provided for you today is a Forest Health briefing handout along with State Forestry's 2022 annual report. Before I brief the committee on the health of Wyoming forests, I want to take a moment and acknowledge that after 19 and a half years of leading Wyoming State Forestry, Mr. Bill Crapser retired at the end of last year. I recognize I have very big shoes to fill today, and want to thank Mr. Crapser for his many years of service and dedication to Wyoming's forests. We are appreciative of our governor for talking Mr. Crapser into working for the governor's office part-time, and he will be working on some specific projects as well as helping with State Forestry's leadership transition. Okay.
Excuse us for one moment as we welcome the House Chairman, and then we'll pause for one moment until we get him up here where he needs to be, and then we'll let you go on ahead. Excuse us for the interruption, please. All right.
Hi.
Welcome.
Welcome. Okay, in 2022, over 18.5 million acres of forested lands were aerial surveyed for forest health threats by Wyoming State Forestry and the U.S. Forest Service. Yellowstone National Park was included in this survey for the first time since 2019. Out of the 18.5 million acres flown, about 98,000 acres were found to have an insect, disease, or abiotic issue, excluding fire. The western spruce budworm continues to be Wyoming's most damaging forest pest by acreage. The western spruce budworm is a defoliator that typically attacks Douglas fir trees of all ages and sizes. I know that's a little confusing. It does also attack spruce trees, but mainly Douglas fir. The highest damage that can be found is in the southern bighorns, as well as in the Bridger-Teton and Shoshone National Forests. There are also pockets that can be found in the Medicine Bow National Forest. And if you've driven I-80 from Cheyenne to Laramie, you've driven through Telephone Canyon. And that is a great area to take a look at the state section that was heavily hit by the western spruce budworm and was treated with a thinning below to help reduce the impact and hopefully help save some of the mature Douglas fir trees. The photo on the cover of your Forest Health briefing packet is also a photo taken from a Douglas fir stand in the southern bighorns. The spruce beetle is the second most damaging insect statewide. Spruce mortality levels appear to be holding about the same since 2016, with the largest pockets of mortality being found on the Shoshone and the Bridger-Teton National Forest. There have been some pockets recently identified in the bighorns, and it's being monitored closely, but is not considered widespread. The mountain pine beetle continues to be at endemic levels, while the pine engraver, which is also known as the Ips, has continued to cause tree mortality, mainly in our ponderosa pine forests and localized areas in the Black Hills and Laramie Mountains. White pine blister rust does continue to kill 5-needle pine trees in Wyoming. And in Wyoming, that means that's limber and white bark pine trees. The high elevation white bark pine is a very important part of an alpine ecosystem and was recently listed as threatened on federal lands by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in December of last year. As for invasive species, we're continuing to monitor within 20 communities across Wyoming for the emerald ash borer. Surveying and monitoring with city and town staff, conservation districts, and arborists, we have yet to confirm the emerald ash borer in Wyoming. It has been confirmed in Colorado, Nebraska, South Dakota, Oregon, but not Wyoming. It is still a very serious concern due to the high populations of ash trees within our communities, such as in Powell or Douglas. The emerald ash borer could kill a quarter or more of a community's trees in these communities. The Japanese beetle was identified in Sheridan in 2020 and has continued to be monitored within that community. There has not been a confirmation of a finding outside of this community. This invasive species attacks a variety of trees and shrubs and can be extremely difficult to eradicate once established in a community, as Sheridan is finding out. Drought plays an important role in stressing trees and reducing their resistance to pest outbreaks. Wyoming has had 3 years in a row of noted extreme drought in portions of the state. We plan to continue to monitor our forests closely this year, watching for signs of increased stress, mortality, and invasives. Shifting from forest health updates, I want to give the committee an update on timber management and the Good Neighbor Authority program. With the support of Wyoming's legislature and through the developed partnerships with the Forest Service and BLM, State Forestry has made significant progress in our Good Neighbor Authority program. The Good Neighbor Authority program allows the state to partner with the federal agencies to conduct work on federal lands by utilizing our staff and state contracting systems in order to get more work on the ground done. So in state fiscal year 2020, State Forestry sold a total of 11 million board feet of federal timber. And then we also contracted through our service contracting system, thinning and aspen enhancement treatment work on 1,200 acres of federal lands. We currently have one GNA coordinator here in Cheyenne and two GNA foresters. One is located for the Bridger Teton, the other one is with the Medicine Bow route. And we are currently working to fill a GNA forester position for the Black Hills and one seasonal for the Bighorns. I want to thank the committee for their support in these positions and remind you that all the GNA positions are federally funded, even though the positions are state employees. We look forward to continuing our partnerships with the BLM and the Forest Service, helping to increase the amount of federal timber, forest health, and fuels projects made available throughout Wyoming. Currently, we have 19 existing GNA project agreements and 2 new agreements in draft stage. So 21 agreements. State Forestry continues to also support active timber management on our own state lands, as well as with private landowners. In fiscal year 2022, we sold 8 million board feet on approximately 1,900 acres of state trust lands. We also assist private landowners across Wyoming, creating forest stewardship plans to help meet each landowner's forest management objectives. In 2022, we completed 21 forest stewardship management plans that covered more than 91,000 acres, adding to a total of 357,000 acres of private forest lands under active forest stewardship management plans. State Forestry recently created the Wyoming Landowner of the Year Award to promote and recognize outstanding stewardship of private forested lands. Tim and Dawn Pexton, who own Saddleback Ranch located in Douglas, were selected as the 2022 Wyoming Landowner of the Year and are the first recipients of this award for their continued active forest management and promotion of landowner education and outreach. With the passing of the bipartisan infrastructure law, we recently received additional funds specific to our state forest action plan. We have already started to utilize these funds by implementing priority forest health treatment work on our state trust lands. Last year's fire season was considered below average for Wyoming's fire season, and yet we still had over 700 fires and burned approximately 6,000 acres or so, give or take, along with 7 EFSA fires. We also had another safe year across Wyoming with no major injuries or deaths related to wildland fire. It is a little too early to provide you with this year's wildfire predictions, as the next 3 months will set the stage for how soon and how intense our fire season will be for the year. I would like to take a moment to thank the Forest Service for all of their support with our Helitack program, specifically the Medicine Bow Route National Forest, who provides staff members to help keep this critical program going throughout the summer. I also want to thank the BLM for their support with our SEAT program, Single Engine Air Tanker program. We have 2 seats and they are housed at the BLM tanker base in Casper, and they help manage our seats with us. So the success we have had with wildland fire suppression is because of the strong partnerships with our federal agencies and county cooperators here in Wyoming. And with that, I will conclude my report and take any questions or can pass along to Maureen to present on behalf of the BLM.
All right, committee, do we have any questions? Any questions? Oh, Senator Ide.
Thank you,
Go right
Chairman
ahead.
Steinmetz. Do you have any data? I haven't had a lot of time to look at this, to how like on a chart or a scale of what our timber harvest has looked like over the last, 50, 100 years, and what, do we have, what's the stats on commercial sawmills how are we doing on timber harvest and production of our timber in this state? Thank you.
Go ahead, and if we can't get that information today, we always know that we can have you email things like that to us, but go ahead and respond if you can.
Thank you, Chairman. Senator Ide, we have the most recent data on Wyoming sawmills just came out in 2018. So it's not the most recent, but due to COVID, the University of Montana conducts a research, and that is available on our website, but I can also get that to you, looking specifically at the state of our industry in Wyoming. Over the course of 50 to 100 years, I could say we definitely had some tie hacking going on back in the day and things like that across our national forest. But historically, we saw in the 90s significant drops in timber harvesting on our federal lands. When it comes to the state lands and private lands, it comes and goes as opportunities occur. But I would recommend, if you're very interested in statistics and data, that we share with you that report. That's the most recent report that we have.
Thank you, Chairman.
All right. Did you have a question, Senator Hicks?
Follow up, Madam Chairman. So, and this would be for any of the agencies, but when we look at the mortality numbers in the acres, it's one thing to just map the acres. It's another thing to understand the nature of the problem. And so when we do the mapping, it would be nice, do we characterize, number one, the age class of the trees as to where we see the infestation, and then what the management area prescription is associated with these infestations and spread. And then sometimes the rate of spread is more important. And, the bar graph shows a little bit of that. But how much of it, when we map that, comes back and we can then overlay the GIS later and say it's predominantly old growth in areas that are management area prescriptions that may be outside of normal treatment parameters. So do we keep track of those numbers?
Phone a friend if you'd like.
Chairman
Go ahead.
Simons, if I may.
Yes.
So, and I actually, in my paper, have quite a bit about the timber for the U.S. Forest Service on the Rocky Mountain region for Wyoming. So I can give you some latest information. But on what you're saying, Senator Hicks, is we can get that. And so one of the things I'll talk about is we're doing a LiDAR flight over the entire Black Hills, both in South Dakota and Wyoming. The LiDAR will get us the density of the trees. It won't tell us the diameter, but it will give the height and the density. And then we're going to go back and ground truth it. So between those two pieces, we're going to do that entire forest. Now that's a commitment, and so we aren't able to do that everywhere, but in a perfect world, that's the kind of information we would have. We're going to feed that into the forest plan revision, which will give us a much better understanding for what is actually out there on that landscape and where it is in that age class, in condition class and all of that. So we're working harder, I think all of us are, to get to where that's the type of information we have consistently. But it's kind of new ground for us to get it holistically, but we're getting there. Senator Hicks.
Madam Chairman, just to follow up on that. So, and I know that the Forest Service is pretty robust with the amount of existing data you have, and you don't believe that you can make an accurate analysis based on the mapping of the pandemics with the management area prescriptions, with the age classes. This is just a better tool that you're bringing to bear that may be able to do more, but you probably have some of this data already as far as the ground truth. Is that be accurate?
Yes, sir. That actually would be. We just have never had it in its entirety at this, pulled together in one run. And so we have bits and pieces of it. And we are working with Wyoming and South Dakota, both the state forestry offices. We're working with them to make sure we get to the appropriate level of data and the appropriate level of analysis. So
Madam Chairman, while we're on the subject, we'll just follow up with that. So when do you expect the actual flights and then the analysis and the data and the ground truthing to become over to look at those? And then what kind of data sharing or, actual discussions in the development of the LiDAR and the data. So if you could dive into that.
So I shared the information up to date with both of our state forest, Kelly and Marcus over in South Dakota. I've shared with them the request that we have for this contract with USGS to do the flight. Now with LiDAR, and I know you're pretty savvy on some of this, Senator Hicks, but LiDAR has to be flown when there's no snow on the ground. So we anticipate the flights will happen sometime probably between June, September, to have the flights completed. We'll get the raw data, and then we're looking at a couple different ways for the assessment, but we're working with the state partners to make sure that this is, we're going about this in the right way. We've agreed to share the information and to work together. And quite frankly, we need to be together on this. We know that. So we'd have the raw data probably by October, November, and then hopefully a couple months of analysis, and we would have it to roll into the forest plan.
And if I may, just to follow up, so that's one forest in Region 2. And so are we scheduled to look at this tool in other forests? And when are you going to plan on rolling those out? And then I'd ask the same thing from R4.
So hopefully this will be successful, and it will show that this is the right place that we need to be. The Medbow, not Thunder Basin, but the Medicine Bow is kicking off. In October 1, they kick off their assessment or the initiating the forest plan revision. If this works the way we think it's going to work for the Black Hills, then ideally we'd be able to do something like that for the Medicine Bow as well. Now, the price tag is pretty hefty. It's costing us $840,000 to do the flights on the Black Hills, just the flight piece of it. So we're, it's like anything, we're going to test it, and we're pretty sure, I think I'm in the 90 percentile, this will get us what we need. But then it's how do we replicate that going forward for forest plan revision, especially like on the Medbow. So I think we would do it at times like that, Senator Hicks, when we're ready to,
Plan revisions.
yeah.
Or major EISs.
Yes, sir.
All right, next,
No,
oh.
need to follow up from
go
Region.
ahead. All right,
Hi.
go ahead.
And I just mentioned from Region 4, it's a similar approach that as we have a priority project, we'll fly LiDAR. We partner closely with the Geospatial Technology and Applications Center out of Salt Lake City, which is actually a national resource that Jackie's looking to partner with as well. And they're exploring new uses for the data. So there have been instances where they've been able to actually discern insect damage from the LiDAR, from the imagery, and then target treatments as they can, figure out which way things are moving and on the edge. So we're definitely leaning into that technology and ways to be more effective in our treatments.
Well, thank you.
All right, Chairman Eklund.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I'd like to get back to Senator Ide's question on tree harvest. It basically went away in the 90s. By the mid-90s, the leases for tree harvest within our national forests ended. And then there was a resurgence because of all the dead trees and a need to get those, as many cleared out as possible. And I think we're kind of past that. It's too bad we had to have a pine beetle epidemic to bring back logging. But my question is, do you have any long-range plans for rejuvenating the logging industry, or is it just going to be based on the next pine beetle infestation? Help me out with this, because we think it'd be a great economic advantage to Wyoming to have logging as part of our economy.
All right, whoever'd like to start out and take that first.
Thank you, Chairman Eklund, Chairman Simons. Yes, we agree completely with that statement, and logging is a very important tool to our forests, and we need to continue to look for different ways to help all of our forested landowners continue to get that active management done on the ground. Hence why we're working so hard in our GNA program to help the Forest Service make that timber more accessible to many areas. And from that area, I would say we need to continue to look for different funding mechanisms and sources for us to continue to do that. And I will pass it on to Jackie.
So Chairman Eklund and Chairman Steinmetz, this is a subject or a topic that's pretty near and dear to my heart. About half of my time every day is spent around this topic, sustaining our timber program and sustaining our timber industry. I would say Jim Nyman is in the room, I believe, and I've almost got him on speed dial. We talk and the folks that he works with. And the Forest Service, I mean, our chief has gone on record and said we cannot afford to lose additional mills. And so we made a couple big commitments recently that are going to be beneficial nationally, but also within Wyoming and South Dakota. And one of those initiatives is the transit pilot. And I don't know if you all have heard about that. The Forest Service has invested $50 million from the bipartisan infrastructure law money into seeing if we can make this pilot work. Historically, we've had a misalignment of where available timber and too much timber in one place and industry with capacity in another place. And so we've had this misalignment. And California is one of those places where, because of a lot of bug infestation and fires, there's wood standing there that is viable and merchantable, but the industry there is flooded. So we've come up with this pilot, and I think it's either signed, if it's not signed, it will be signed this week with the Klamath National Forest. And we've been working with our state forest office here in Wyoming and South Dakota, and that's a reoccurring theme. There's a lot of partnership going on. But we should be moving wood shortly within the month of March from California to the Black Hills. And here, I think it's going to Hewlett, Jim? Yes. Sorry, we do work really closely. I've got 2 standing calls that Jim and I are on each week around this transit pilot. And so what that does is bring some stability and some, it helps with multiple problems, right? It helps with some of the instability we have had trying to figure out what is the right level of sustainable harvest across our forest here. But you have this excess wood that creates a huge fire risk in other places. So it is a great opportunity to hopefully help on a multitude of fronts. We're super excited about it. It's a big investment. Because it's a pilot, we have some opportunity to try some things like this is going to be wood moved in rail cars, which we have not done in a long time in this country, has been able to make that kind of investment and that kind of effort. And so it is exciting. Again, it's not a long-term solution, sir, to I think what you're trying to get at in regard to maintaining that infrastructure, but everything helps us be in a better place to kind of move forward. So that's just one thing. And I think I'm going through my whole talk as we're going through questions, but that is kind of an exciting piece of news.
Do you have a follow-up,
Yeah,
Chairman
follow-up,
Eklund?
Chairman.
Okay,
So-
go ahead.
And that is good news. Being able to supply sawmills and keeping them viable is a good thing. Where I'm getting at is because we don't really have the on-the-ground infrastructure to do the logging in the forests in Wyoming, we have these infestations and we're unable to deal with them when they take off. So I guess I would like to see some encouragement from you towards the federal government, if you can, to get leases going so that we can, our sawmills wouldn't have to rely on dead trees from California.
All right, Senator French.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. To the regional, and I forgot your name, I apologize.
Jackie Buchanan.
Jackie, would you address my part of the world, which is Park County, the northwest corner, the Shoshone Forest? I mean, looking at your maps and from personally driving up through those forests, I think it's one of the most infested areas in the state. I mean, it's bad.
Mhm.
So what programs are you contemplating up there? We used to have a sawmill in Cody, that's no, a private sawmill, that's no longer there. So the few timber sales that are done, and there's not a lot of them, now fit out of Montana comes down and hauls the logs off. So can you comment on possibly the worst part of the state and what your plans are? Thank you.
Madam Chairman. So I can't disagree with you. It is, but it's an interesting piece on the Shoshone, because I think about 80% of that forest is wilderness designated. So what we can actually do in parts of it, active management is almost impossible. Not completely impossible, but really challenging because of the laws around designated wilderness. And so we are doing our best to, I was talking to someone just before we started about, the trails and the condition of some of the landscape up there. So it's a host of things that we know need attention. Now, what has been a bit of a struggle for the Forest Service is we've gotten a lot of money through the bipartisan infrastructure law, but it came, for this piece of work around active management and reducing fire risk on landscape in some high profile areas. It didn't really give us a lot of money for wilderness and recreation management. So we're struggling a little bit with that. It doesn't mean that we can't or shouldn't be doing some work there, but you add all the challenges up of the wilderness, the wilderness law and the restrictions around designated wilderness, and the almost reduction in money, but definitely a flat budget around recreation and that kind of management. It's challenging, but we know it, and that's a part of the working with the Forest Service with Wyoming and with our partners, outfitter guides, and folks that are in the recreation industry. We're just going to have to come at it at all sides, but that is the most challenging area in Wyoming.
All right, follow up, Senator French. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Madam Chairman. Related to that, up in our part of the world, we have a lot of trails. Would you ever suspend the reg or law or whatever that you can't use a chainsaw? As those trees deteriorate by the millions and fall across those trails, then as people use the trails, they go around the log, and it's because they got to, hand cut a path through, and it's nearly impossible to clear those trails. I mean, they get it done. We have volunteer groups up there that do a great job, but if they were allowed to, for 2 weeks, whatever, go up through there with a chainsaw and just cut those and somebody roll them out of the way, it'd make a huge difference.
Madam Chairman. So we actually do have the ability. The regional forester, my boss, I'm his deputy, has the ability in non-emergency situations to authorize use of chainsaw in a wilderness for if we make the case for safety, human health, that kind of thing. And so we can make that case. Now, I'll share with you, we tried it 4 years ago in Colorado, down on the San Juan, and we got, we got a notice of intent to sue us in about 24 hours. But we did go forward and do some of that work because it was a health and safety issue. I think here in Wyoming on Shoshone, what we need is the forest to come forward with a request. We run through an analysis, but we actually do have the ability to utilize chainsaws in a wilderness for that kind of activity if we tie it to safety concerns. And, folks use those trails. So I think we can make that case.
All right, any further questions? Further questions, seeing none. Whoever would like to proceed next, I know we've
I'm gonna
asked
sit back.
you a lot of questions, so go on
Madam
ahead.
Chairman, I guess
Oh,
I would
yes, go ahead.
maybe follow up a
Chairman
little on this
Eklund.
question. So if we can do that, we can bring a chainsaw into here. Why would it be a much greater stretch to bring in equipment for the same reason, the forest health and the forest safety in a wilderness area to stop an infestation of pine beetles or whatever? But I'm curious if that's a possibility.
So we have a process that we run through, sir, a minimum analysis tool for the wilderness of, what is the minimum necessary to do what we're trying to accomplish what we're trying to do out there. So, we just did some work within a wilderness boundary in Colorado, fuels reduction work, but I'll tell you, it was hand piling and thinning because we couldn't get to the drive, enough of a driver around. We really needed full mechanical. So we just have to run through the process, but we would do that assessment and especially reducing fire risk around communities like around Cody or settlements or whatever housing communities. That possibility is there. We have to assess each situation individually and run through that to see what the right decision is.
All right, and maybe Senator French, after we conclude our formal meeting, we could follow up on that and see what we can do to get the process started in your area.
Madam Chairman, yeah, it's a mess up there. It truly is a mess. The trails are a mess. The forest, I mean, in my lifetime, I will never see them as a beautiful forest that I grew up with because it's dead. And so it's pretty sad in places up there. You drive up through and you're like, oh, geez. So I implore all of you that are in a position of power, may not be the word, but position to influence whatever, that you please do something. I know my area is not the only one, but there's lots of areas that we need your help. You're the decision makers, and we implore you to please start doing something. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. So whoever would like to be next, go ahead and continue with your presentation.
Madam Chairperson, Mr. Chairperson, and members of the Joint Agriculture Committee, I appreciate the invitation to provide the information about BLM Wyoming's forestry and field programs. It went off. Forestry and fields programs and forest conditions on BLM managed lands across the state. BLM Wyoming has significant forest resources in this state. The forestry program is actively managing them for long-term health, resiliency, and local economic opportunities. We were able to fill all of our field forester positions in the state last year. This has not been done for several years. Our vacant forestry program lead position announcement has closed and will hopefully be filled shortly. And then BLM Wyoming Forestry will be fully staffed. Based on 2021 Department of Interior and BLM economic analysis, the BLM forestry program provided $5.5 million in direct and indirect contributions to Wyoming's economy. In FY23, the forest management budget in our state received a slight increase over FY22. Additionally, we were able to secure funding for forest and salvage and forest health restoration projects. BLM Wyoming has also received some bipartisan infrastructure law funding for landscape scale projects. For FY23 bill funding, we are working towards addressing our reforestation backlog in the Black Hills, management of white bark pine, and accelerating planned forest health and fuels reduction projects across the state. In FY22, BLM Wyoming offered 7.3 million board feet of timber and sold 3.2 million board feet. Our FY23 target this year is 4.5 million board feet of timber, byproduct of our forest health and fuels reduction treatments. This year, we are set to offer approximately 4.5 million to meet our targets. Additionally, BLM Wyoming sells thousands of cords of firewood for personal and commercial use each year, and treats thousands of acres of forested land to reduce hazardous fuels and restore and improve forest health each year. Using the Good Neighbor Authority in conjunction with Wyoming State Forestry, we have implemented numerous projects across boundaries, allowing for management and landscape scales and improving accessibility to forest resources and products. For the last several years, we have implemented an online sale program for our special forest products. The public has responded positively to the convenience this system offers. We have approximately doubled our fuel wood and Christmas tree sales in the last year. We are currently having record sales for both Christmas trees and firewood. On Bureau Management Forests, we continue to see large amounts of defoliation from western spruce budworm, going into its 4th year of the outbreak. We have also observed increased mortality from spruce beetle and Doug fir beetle, possibly linked to the trees stressed from drought and defoliation. White bark pine protection. White bark pine was recently listed as a threatened species by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. BLM Wyoming is actively creating strategies to protect and enhance white bark pine habitat, along with streamlining streamlining the consultation process to continue implementation and management of these habitats. In FY22, the BLM Wyoming Fuels Management Program treated 126,000 acres of public lands. This included 14,000 acres treated in forest and woodland. The primary objectives include reducing conifer encroachment within aspen stands and in sagebrush, forest thinning to increase forest health and vigor, reducing the fuel load in order to decrease wildfire risk and severity, restoring riparian areas, and improving habitat for species like mule deer, elk, bighorn sheep, and greater sage grouse. To accomplish this, we use a variety of techniques, including hand thinning, mastication, prescribed fire, and timber sales. Executive Order 14072, Strengthening the Nation's Forests, Communities, and Local Economies, set a deadline of April 2023 for USDA and DOI to come up with definitions of old growth and mature forests and woodlands, and to develop a framework for the completing of this inventory. The BLM is coordinating with USDA Forest Service as well as meeting with a wide variety of stakeholders to meet this deadline. The BLM looks forward to continued work with our state and federal partners and private industry to manage towards a healthy, productive, fire-resistant, and sustainable forest. Partnerships are vital to managing sustainable working public lands. Thank you for the opportunity to share this information. The BLM appreciates maintaining direct communication with all of you.
All right, questions from the committee, Senator Hicks.
Yeah, real quick question. So we've done a lot of work down in Carbon County with the BLM on primarily fuels dealing with juniper encroachment into crucial winter ranges and sage grouse and stuff. But we've run into an inconsistent application of the policy with BLM as it pertains to paleo surveys associated with cultural resources, which has now become a significant impediment to being able to get in treatments on the ground. And I was just wondering if you could share any insights you might have as why there's an inconsistent application of the need for paleo surveys of this nature for vegetation treatments from district to district.
Go ahead if you can tackle that one.
I am aware of your concerns, and I do know that it is being brought to a higher level in order to manage how we are going to move forward with that. That is all I know at this time.
Chairman,
Follow up, go ahead.
I would request that you elevate and expedite that so we can actually get some of that work done on the ground that you talked about. So it is becoming an impediment and it's an inconsistency. So any resolution of that issue would be much appreciated.
All right, thank you for that. Are there any further questions for the BLM? Go ahead, Senator Ide.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. That was good to hear all of the conversation here with everybody. I think sometimes we lose track of what all these studies are doing. And, you know, when I was young, I worked in a couple of private logging camps and, you know, outside of Tie Siding and one down in Buford, Rifle, Colorado. You hear, as I get older, you hear a lot of conversation that our forests are being managed as museums and not viable commercial, you know, industry that we have opportunity with. And I just want to, my colleagues here have all mentioned the same thing. I think all of this red tape and reports. We need to focus on the end game of getting more industry to work our timberlands here. I mean, I've been to John Day, Oregon, and Burns, and it's just devastated those communities, the logging that they used to have in the day. And now all that's there is a BLM office and everybody's out of work. So anyway, just wanted to try to keep everybody's focus on what we're here for, and it's to get jobs and industry in our state. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Would you like to respond to those comments? It's up to you.
We are trying our best to make a sustainable system.
All right, thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, whoever would like to go next.
Good afternoon, Chairman Steinmetz, Chairman Eklund, and members of the committee. I'm Deb Okeson. I'm a Deputy Regional Forester in the Intermountain region of the Forest Service, and I really appreciate the opportunity to address the committee today. I also want to thank Kelly Norris, Acting State Forester, and her predecessor, Bill Krapser, for the invitation and for all of the support in working together. Within Wyoming, the Intermountain region has approximately 3.8 million acres across all or parts of 4 national forests, which include the Bridger-Teton, the Uinta-Wasatch Cache, the Caribou-Targhee, and the Ashley National Forests. We manage those forests for multiple uses, including forest health, water, wildlife management, protecting cultural and heritage resources, livestock grazing, extracting minerals, outdoor recreation, and timber production. In Wyoming, we administer 418 grazing permits, 4 ski area permits, and 235 outfitter and guide permits. Estimated visitation to Western Wyoming on the Intermountain region forests is approximately 2.2 million, and the vast majority of those are visiting either the Bridger-Teton National Forest or the Flaming Gorge National Recreation Area. We work very closely with state, tribal, local, and private sector partners to maintain forest health. We continue to reap dividends by driving decision-making to that local level where people have an awareness of the land and the unique circumstances. So our forest supervisors, district rangers, and employees work directly with the communities in which they live and work. We want to build that positive relationship and move forward. And as the pandemic restrictions have lifted, we're engaging more and more face-to-face and are very much welcoming that opportunity. With regard to fire, although, as Kelly mentioned, 2022 was considered a below average fire year, we recognize that there are still significant changes. Drought, overgrown forests, past fire suppression policies, and the continued development of the wildland-urban interface all contribute to wildfire risk, and which in turn impact public health and community safety. Mitigating those risks is USDA's #1 priority. So with regard to that, as we strive to implement the 10-year wildfire crisis strategy and take advantage of bipartisan infrastructure law funding in Wyoming, there are several actions that we're taking that I'd like to share with you. First off, we're working to increase our internal workforce. During the past decade, that had been dwindling, and we've been able to fill many critical positions. We're focusing around fuels management, as well as key positions like grant specialists, foresters, and engineers to get the work done on the ground. We're also partnering extensively, and that's the only way to get all of this work done. Through shared stewardship with the Rocky Mountain region and the state, we're working to identify common priority goals and landscapes in which to focus in order to decrease the risks to our communities. And there are also a lot of cross-boundary opportunities that we're exploring in order to get the work done in the places that it needs to be done. At the conclusion of this, we should have a much better strategy around where to implement work to make the greatest impact on the landscape. We continue to increase the scope and scale of active forest management through Good Neighbor Authority funding. And Kelly also mentioned several of those Good Neighbor positions, which were able to accomplish work through the state with federal funding. Also wanted to give you an update on the Regional Forest Products and Fuels Program. We found success at the grassroots level in Lincoln and Sublette counties, working with collaborative groups and cooperatives. And as discussed last year, Those were funded by this and the governor's task force to identify future vegetation management opportunities in these counties. With regard to timber in the Intermountain region, annually, Wyoming contributes about 7 to 10% of the timber that's produced in the Intermountain region. While it's relatively small, it does provide important benefits to communities and to the national forest in Wyoming play an important role in that. For example, in fiscal year 21, the Bridger Teton sold 7,314 cubic feet. In 2022, it exceeded expectations at 12,568 cubic feet, 100 cubic feet. And in 2023, we expect that to continue with the majority of sales not occurring until the fourth quarter, however. We're working across state lines. For example, on the UNO Wasatch Cache, there's a number of harvests that are taking place, significant volume that are being processed at the South and Jones Mills in Evanston and Mountain View. 7 sales occurred in 2021, and there are 15 additional sales that are planned through 2026 as part of the 5-year vegetation management strategy on the UNO Wasatch Cache. We continue to meet or exceed our hazardous fuels targets. With 100% of those we've achieved from 2016 to 2021. In 2021, we treated 8,141 acres in Wyoming, and in 2022, we stand at 8,945 acres. Other important work that we're doing in Wyoming is around our range and recreation programs. We're trying to strengthen those programs, but as Jackie mentioned, we have had relatively flat funding with regard to those, but those programs are also vital to the communities that we serve. In FY21 and 23, the Intermountain region received about $6 million in funding from the Great American Outdoors Act. That funding is used to improve signs, campgrounds, roads, water and wastewater lines, parking lots, trails, and bridges. We've completed or initiated 16 projects in Wyoming, and we expect to receive additional funding in fiscal year 24 and 25. And these projects create jobs in communities and improve recreation opportunities throughout the state. So this concludes my prepared remarks. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you, and I look forward to the continuing partnership with the state of Wyoming. We're working together for healthy, diverse, and resilient forests that provide current and future benefits to the people of Wyoming and to those of the United States. And there's no shortage of work that's to be done, and we look forward to doing that work together.
Thank you for your comments. It looks like Senator French has some questions for you.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chairman. What's your view of cooperating agency status for like the locals and county commissioners to have a say in RMPs of both BLM and force in the planning process? I don't think the local officials are given enough say in it. When I was a commissioner and we had these RMPs on our forest and BLM lands, I mean, it seemed to me like it was like, okay, look, we have to check these 4 or 5 boxes that will appease the commissioners and make it right with the higher ups. Would you be in favor of enhancing the say for local cooperators?
Yeah, absolutely. And within the Intermountain region, we have not done forest plan revision for a very long time. I think the Ashley National Forest Plan is coming out, and that one hadn't been revised for 30 years. So we're coming into this new, but I think Sue Eichhoff, the forest supervisor there, has set a great example of trying to bring in county commissioners, state agencies, and others to really sit down and understand the needs for change and then to chart a path forward. And, you know, the state forest action plans are critical components of that. And I know many counties have their own plans that, you know, report up to the state plans. So we absolutely want to work together as partners, want to ensure that the forests are an integral part of that landscape and the community, and the people that live there need to have a say.
All right, we'll go first to Senator Ide, then we'll go to you, Senator Cole. Go ahead, Senator Ide.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a real quick follow-up, quick question. I've heard it said a few times, see it all the time. Sustainability. somebody want to tell me what you mean by that? Can you define it? And what's the end goal of sustainability? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, I think Madam Chairman, in the context that we're talking about, sustainability is being able to utilize forest resources and products, but without depleting that resource. So in a way that it can be used by future generations. So we wouldn't want to, go in and do logging that would leave, a hillside entirely bereft of any trees, and that would take, decades upon decades to grow back. We want to do things in a strategic way so that future generations can also make use of those resources.
All right, Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just, I guess, first a technical question. You mentioned cubic feet for forest products. Is that board feet, or you use 2 different units of measure?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Jackie's
I think we might need a further explanation than that.
I was kind of laughing because let me see if I can go hot. There I am. I was actually laughing myself because I'm looking at my paper and I have CCF, which is the cubic feet, but then I also have million board feet. And so we get a little schizophrenic in how we talk about our wood numbers. But it's a way that it comes down. Our targets come down in CCF. So you'll see from the Forest Service side, a lot of times that's how we reference. And then million board feet, you basically, it's a doubling. If you have, 90,000 CCF would be 45 million board feet. Yeah, so we get a little confused ourselves sometimes on how we talk about it, but it's because we actually do have different ways that we have to account for it. But I was sitting here laughing myself because I'm like, I'm not sure. I have both on my paper too, so sorry about that.
Follow up.
No, a real question.
And sorry, Madam Chairman, I did not ask to be recognized.
Well, a little levity is always good. So I'm listening to this, and I'm not an expert on forests. I assume you folks are. I see it as kind of a mess out there. We have fire issues, air quality issues because of fire issues, and all I hear is, well, we're stuck. We can't get something done because so-and-so won't let us. It's not making the situation better, though. I mean, we're still stuck in the same boat. We get air pollution coming in here from California for the forest burning over there, wherever it's going on the West Coast. Thank you very much for contaminating our air and destroying our summers. What the heck are we going to do about this? I mean, I listen to everybody, and it sounds like everything's great. Everything's going along well. Boy, we're making progress, and here's my numbers. But the end result is we still have this continuing problem that's getting worse. And I hope to hear some solutions. I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know there's a problem. Okay, and that's just I guess, a comment, and any response would be appreciated. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
And
All
Chairman,
right, we'll let you respond, and then we have some more questions. So whoever wants to take that one.
Well, I definitely want to wag at this one, but go
Okay.
ahead.
and Chairman Steinmetz and Senator Kolb, thank you.
I hate to interrupt.
Oh.
The House is still on 3rd reading, so we got to grind through a few more bills.
All right,
We
thank
need-
you for
we need
joining
Wade
us.
back.
Would you go
Okay.
do some more bills?
Would you go do our bills?
We're working on
Please.
the bills.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Good luck. All right. Whoever would like to take that one.
So I'll start. and
Go ahead.
I'm sure Jackie can definitely add. We absolutely acknowledge the fact that we have a problem. That's why we have a 10-year wildfire crisis strategy. We're using emergency declarations in order to get work done that will allow us to do things like expedite NEPA and to consider a limited number of alternatives. In some cases, the NEPA can actually be completed after the fact. I think there's a growing acknowledgement in the agency and across the country that the only way to overcome these problems is to work together. And so, as Senator French had mentioned, we've got to get those voices in the room. All of us together are smarter than any of us individually, and none of us want polluted air or, insect-infested forests that are dying and wildfires that wipe out communities. So we certainly would welcome any opportunity to work with the state and with other partners to accomplish the work that needs to be done.
All right, did you want to weigh in on that one?
I still have a part of my talk to go through, so Madam
right.
Chairman, if I may, some of that is included.
All right, well, we have
Comments.
a question from Senator Hicks here before we go to that.
Let Jackie go.
Oh, no,
go ahead.
he will defer to you and let you go ahead with your presentation, so go right ahead.
Madam Chairman, that makes me nervous when Senator Hicks yields to me.
He's a tough guy.
I've been
It should.
around a couple times with him on this, so now my anxiety level has gone up, but okay, we'll see how we go.
Madam Chairman, rightfully so.
I would agree.
Yes. So, good afternoon, Chairman Steinmetz, and well, we lost Chairman Eklund, but members of the committee. It is always a happy day for me to be back here in Wyoming. I've lived and worked in and out of Wyoming for 35 years. Beginning my career, I was up in Casper, have some longstanding, I have family here, and so I'm always happy to be back and to be able to spend some time with you. And I very much appreciate coming before the committee and being able to share this information. We're proud of it, of the work that we're doing. We're proud of the relationships, but we also know we have a lot of work to do. And being able to engage with all of you is always helpful for us to be able to look ahead and think about what we're going to do. I would really like to thank Kelly Norris, the acting state forester here in Wyoming, her predecessor, Bill, and all the folks from the Department of Ag and State Lands that we do so much work with. The partnerships with Wyoming is pretty incredible. And so we do all this work that we do, almost all of it in partnership with somebody from within the state. And so we just want to recognize that and say thank you. So let's talk about some of the challenges that we are facing that leads us to this work that we have in front of us. We've talked about the bug infestation. We've talked about the drought conditions. This is going to be a fascinating year to see where we end up with the amount of snow and moisture that we have. It's going to bring probably some gifts and some challenges. Fire, we did. 2022 was a light fire season, but I still have very vivid memories from the 2020 fire season, and the Mullen Fire was here in Wyoming, a multitude of fires that year. And so, one of the things I think we can't do is let our guard down, and we have to continue to focus on reducing fire risk and improving the overall health of our landscape. So, and if the ones who have been through this with me before, I'm kind of known for going a little rogue. I have my printed comments, but there's always some points that come into my head that I think I want to make sure that I capture. So the bipartisan infrastructure law, and this is what Deb was just referencing when we talked about this crisis that we have, the condition out there, the amount of fire risk on the landscape across the whole West. But even here in Wyoming, we're impacted by what happens on California. And so this is truly, and I've got 32 years in with the USDA and with the US Forest Service, and I've never had the opportunity or felt like I had the opportunity that we have right now with the bipartisan infrastructure law. It is generational in what it is giving us in regards to the amount of money and the amount of time. Part of our challenge has been we've had annual budgets where we would get, money, and honestly, half the time we wouldn't even get our money till June. And then we'd be like, you have to spend all this money by the end of September. That is a crazy cycle to really be able to accomplish, big things. With this new opportunity, it's over a 10-year period. And the amount of work that you can do when you have that amount of time and the dollars with it, it's pretty incredible. So it is exciting. Now, we have there's a high level of expectation around us delivering on that. And that's okay, because it should be, right? I mean, we're talking billions of dollars of investment. And if there isn't accountability, then we've all lost the game, I think, in the big scheme of it. But this is our chance, and it's not just up to the feds. It's not up to just the states. It is up to all of us working together to kind of figure it out and get it done. So that's exciting. As a part of Bill we've sent quite a bit of money through our state forest action plan. And I'll just give you some figures to talk about, what kind of a difference it is making. But in 2023, we received, $114,000 for state fire assistance. We sent this to Wyoming. $658,000 for forest health work, and $397,000 for forest stewardship work. In addition to that, and I talked about Wyoming Department of Ag and the work that we do with those folks, we sent $1,725,000, this is all in fiscal year 22, to Wyoming Department of Ag for range disaster recovery from the Mullen Fire. That's the one that I mentioned. And when a fire happens, and Senator Hicks, I've worked with you enough on some of this stuff, years of work. It takes years of work to get over, one bad fire season. So we're still dealing with the Mullen Fire 3 years later, but that is quite a bit of investment. We gave almost $255,000 to Wyoming Game and Fish for range and watershed restoration, and then about $2,850,000 to Wyoming State Forestry Division for fuels and commercial timber sales. So, this bill opportunity, bipartisan, I'm going to keep saying that, Chairman Steinmetz. We had a little conversation around the heaviness of our acronyms sometimes. But it really is bringing money into the state that is focused on restoration and resiliency. Which will lead to rural economy, strength of rural economy, the supporting of the industry that's here, both the ag producers, our ranchers, our cattlemen, our agriculture communities, as well as our timber and our recreation and all those things that bring dollars into Wyoming and make it a really much stronger economy as a whole. We also received in 22 $8.5 million in disaster recovery for Wyoming projects as well, and the Medicine Bow, the Bighorn, and the Black Hills and Thunder Basin National Grassland. So again, a multitude of ways that money's coming into the state through the U.S. Forest Service, and that works the same way with Region 4 too. I mean, it's, but we've never seen the level of money that we have now for certain things. And we were just with Wyoming stock growers before we came over here, and one of the things you've heard though, we have had some struggles in a few areas like recreation and even range, where the budgets have stayed pretty flat. So we have an increase in money around doing the restoration work and the fuels, fire risk reduction, but we're still short on some areas. But our hope is if we do a good job and we prove that we can deliver with the money and the time that we have, that hopefully we'll get more money in those arenas as well. For those, I don't know if anyone is interested in Thunder Basin, but one of the positive pieces for fiscal year 23 is we have been able to fully fund the request by that working group there on the prairie dog management. And I know when I've been before the committee before, Thunder Basin prairie dog management is usually a topic of interest. And so we have put in $247,000, the full additional dollars that were requested to do a multitude of activities out there. But that's also a plus going into this fiscal year. Big topic, I'll take a big breath before I dive into this one, Black Hills National Forest. A lot of stuff going on there on a multitude of fronts. And so we're currently undergoing forest plan revision, and it's not working. And I'll just say this, I don't think it's worked quite as well as we had hoped it would in regard to some of the working with the county commissioners, quite frankly, and cooperating agency status. We had a few bumps on that. I think we're getting past that, but the forest plan revision process is important, and we are doing our best to get it going down the road in the way it's supposed to be. Now, part of the question we've had around the Black Hills is what is the sustainable harvest level? And we've had, we had a bug infestation there. We went above what we call our ASQ allowed cut in the current forest plan to deal with that bug situation. We've been questioned pretty heavy by a multitude of environmental folks around we've cut too much. And now we have to go to a big reduction in what that harvest level looks like. We've been working really hard to try to get some of this information, like that LiDAR that I spoke to, that'll give us what we need to make a informed decision based off of really good data. So we have landed on, for this year, fiscal '23, 120,000 CCF for the target, which that is that's in about the range where we were last year, although they did not achieve that target last year. And we're hoping to hold at that level as a minimum until we get through the forest plan revision and get this additional data gathered. It is important, the timber industry up there, and it's not just Nyman's, but there's a whole host of folks both in South Dakota and here in Wyoming that are counting on us delivering on that wood and that market. And so we're doing what we can and working hard to pull in things like the transit opportunity to move wood from California to stabilize it for a while. But, big work going on the Black Hills. We also, let's see, I'm going to jump around. We talked about the transit, the LiDAR. We also, one of the things that we're working on with the Black Hills and also for the Forest Service around land management, there's a huge increase in tribal connection. And so we're trying to figure that out as well. It's important, but it's another piece of the puzzle as we go into consideration for what's ahead of us. Fire season, as we talked about, fiscal year '22 was a light fire year, and we are all grateful for that. I think, Kelly, the numbers I had were 768 fires, a little over 16,000 acres. That is tremendously different than, again, what we had in 2020. This year, we'll see. It's all about how long does the snowpack last? How fast does it come off the hillside? And do we go into summer in April, or do we go into summer in July, like we would hope to? So we'll see what it brings. But we have, through, again, that bill funding, been able to shore up some of our firefighting assets across Wyoming here, and so hopefully whatever comes, again, working with our state partners and our other feds with the BLM, we'll be in a good place to respond accordingly. Let's see, we have some great examples, talk a little bit about invasive weeds, big topic for everybody. Medicine Bow Route has a decision, they can do aerial application. Huge win for us to be able to deal with cheatgrass and such. The bighorn, and I have both the forest suit from Russ Bacon from the Medbow here with me, and Clint Coolidge, who's the acting up on the bighorn. I think the decision's either signed or going to be signed this week for the bighorn for being able to deal with invasive non-native weeds as well, and doing aerial application. And with our state partners and other federal partners dealing with that, because you restore the health and resiliency, reduce the fire risk. I mean, it's a win-win-win when you can treat noxious weeds. So we've got that work done. And let's see, I think that probably lines up. Oh, and I don't know if anyone's interested in the West Fork of Battle Creek Land Exchange. Does that ring a bell for anybody? That's great. Great that it doesn't ring a bell for you, but we are working with Public Lands, Wyoming Lands, to look at a land exchange that involves a reservoir. I think Jason is back here too, maybe who chuckled at me. But we are working with them. NRCS is the lead agency on that. But it is something that, we are considering at the request from the state. And so again, that's about partnership. So I'm going to conclude what was a really a little disjointed piece from me, but I think we jumped into so many of my topics throughout our opportunity here. I'll just close with really appreciate Wyoming and working with everyone that is a part of the state government and the other agencies here. I've worked across this country, and I've never had the experience that I've had here in Wyoming in regard to what we're able to do and the spirit for which we do it. So for the Rocky Mountain region, my boss, Frank Bem, who would be here if he did not have COVID, I just want to say thank you and appreciate what you all do.
All right, thank you for your remarks. It looks like Senator Hicks has some questions.
Madam Chairman, and given the time, I'll try to be brief and succinct, but I think you understand the frustration of everybody here in Wyoming. Yeah, whether it's a loss of the timber industry, it's not unique to Wyoming. It's forest wide. That's a frustration. Now we're dealing with the fires, and then the fires, the invasive species, and so it's a compounding effect with beetles, old growth, accumulation of fuels. It's a tremendous frustration, and I think a lot of our frustration, it feels like, and I'll coin the terminology of a friend of mine, says oftentimes it feels like we're prescribing a 1 acre solution to a 10 million acre problem. And so that's what we're faced in. And sometimes, when you guys give your report, it sounds like a lot of acres, but in the context of everything under the forest management, we're talking single percentages. And so it is the epitome of a single, 1 acre solution to a 10 million acre project. And you have a partner in Wyoming. One of the things I don't want to get lost in the conversation, when we talk about forest health and vegetation management and fires and fuels, they're all intricately linked with water yield. And what I see as one of the biggest single issues in the Western United States is the ability to manage our federal lands and our private lands for water yield. And it doesn't matter whether you're on the Front Range of Colorado or you're sitting down in Las Vegas. Folks, your urban interface runs all the way to Los Angeles. It's 44 million people that get their drinking water out of the Colorado River. And you guys control the largest storage facility in North America, and it's called the Snowpack at high elevation. It's almost exclusively on Forest Service lands. And so I don't want to get lost in the idea that it's all about fires and fuels, because it's absolutely interdependent and interrelated to everything that we look at as water yield. And so we need to keep that in focus. It's a system, and they're watersheds, and we need to prescribe solutions at that level. I appreciate all the work you've done, and it's encouraging that we have, for the first time, at least in some of your estimates, a reasonable budget through some of these. But it's been my experience, particularly in light of all the federal dollars, it's not the money right now, it's the process that I think that most of us are frustrated with. And so what I would ask of each and every one of you is, what tools do you need from either the state of Wyoming or from our congressional delegation to give you the ability to expedite the work that needs to be done on our national forests? If money is no longer the issue, then we need to deploy every tool and asset available. And it's been my experience, it's the process to roll out what I would say relatively simple, even if they're just habitat treatments, can take years to get these done. And so what tools do you need from us to implement this?
Do you want to take the first slide?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I think we've made some progress recently. I mentioned the emergency NEPA authorities, and the Secretary of Agriculture declared all of the fire sheds within the United States, which are derived from a bunch of different data, but largely deal with protecting watersheds and communities, have declared those emergency areas. And so that opens up a whole new range of things for us to look at. So I mentioned the NEPA authorities, where we can often do now NEPA concurrent with doing the work, or do just an action, no action alternative. And so that has helped. I think we're also investing in some of the resources that we need in terms of consultation. We're trying to partner with other agencies, and they've received some funding, so that's opened up some things. So I think we're in a better situation than what we have been. congressional support is always, and the support of committees like this are always important. And I just think if we can invest, from my perspective, investing in shared stewardship and that partnership and ways to get the work done together would be probably the biggest thing at this point. But Jackie, you may have some other.
Madam Chairman?
Go ahead.
Senator Hicks, yeah, you're spot on in regard to money isn't the issue. I think we've talked multiple times around capacity is part of the issue. So Deb brought up the opportunity under Good Neighbor Authority and shared stewardship. And we do have a shared stewardship with the state of Wyoming. But anything we can do, because we are struggling to have enough folks to actually do the work on the ground. So we can get through. We have some tools to expedite the NEPA. We have some ability to move forward in getting to that place. But, I heard Russ just in our last meeting say he's got 60 vacancies. We are struggling to bring folks on. So if there's other ways to get some of this work done, and we've got some examples with other states like Colorado under shared stewardship and Good Neighbor Authority, we've stood up a fuels crew. And so we have some options working with a state partner, but if we want to speed up our chance to get some of this work done, that's where, for me, the bottleneck is right now, of being able to get the boots on the ground to carry it out.
So, Madam Chairman, let's just explore that a little bit, given the level of vacancies. The state of Wyoming, through our own state agencies, hires a number of experts. And so is there an opportunity to expand Good Neighbor Authority to use our wildlife biologist, our range specialist, our state historical preservation office to do part of that work through some type of good neighbor arrangement? Because that we have that expertise within the state of Wyoming. It's just, I think been referenced earlier, sometimes we just relegate it to a level of cooperating agency status. It's more than just a forester.
Yep.
We can provide those other resources, but I need to know what those resources are, what the demand, so we can come back. We're no different than you guys. We're maybe a little more, what I would say, nimble on our feet, but we're not nimble. We're still government. And so it takes a year in our process to move anything through. But that's what I need to know, what it's going to take from a state standpoint, the resources that we could help deploy to get our chemistry and our watersheds and our fire models and fuels back under control and deal with the issues of water yield with our national forest. You got a partner. Now you need to learn how to use them, folks.
That to me is probably one of the best opportunities we have and one of the greatest potential, Senator Hicks. I'm sorry, Madam Chairman. I have to get into this rhythm of this.
You're fine.
Sorry about that.
Once you learn, then we'll be gone.
But, we can certainly, both Deb and I can work with Kelly and the folks here in the state to look at that. The same thing with our BLM partners. How can we come at this? But there is a lot of opportunity and funding that we can shift through that, Senator Hicks, that would serve the state of Wyoming and serve the federal land and everybody. And so we'll plan on getting together and getting some stuff lined out, as this is what could make a difference.
All right, thank you.
All right, and with that, I think we need to schedule you at some of our interim meetings. You have a committee that is very engaged on this issue, and we'd like to move forward as quickly as we can and start that partnership. So committee, any further questions? Thank you for being with us, Treasurer Meyer. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask?
I guess just one. First of all, I want to thank you for the commitment that you make to this with the little amount of help that you've had from the federal government in so many other ways, and thank you for the partnership of working with the state. I'd kind of like at some point in time, I guess, try to couch this in a manner that most of the liberals back in Washington, D.C. will recognize, is kind of look at it as like if all the forests burned down, that'll probably burn down because of the poor management in past years. What does that actually do to carbon dioxide in the atmosphere? And this tell them that, if we could plant, 10 million trees a year instead of 100 million trees a year, their solution would be, taken care of. If we can actually get the math on that, and you could use that as a wedge issue when you talk to these people, sell them green because that's what they're buying, I guess. And you'll probably get a lot more funding. And maybe we can actually kick industry into this, because that's where you're really going to get, you put the capitalistic system to work in the United States of America, you're going to get results. And so, if you can, I guess, trick them into making us go back to work in Wyoming across all the rest of the forest, because I think that the numbers are there, that's going to solve a lot of their problems, but it'll get us back to work, and you'll have the resources. And really, capitalism works. That's the message that I have, and try to figure out how you can make it work.
All right, thank you, Treasurer Meyer. Next, President Driscoll.
I don't have a whole lot. First, Kelly, welcome as State Forester. You got some big shoes to fill. You're going to do a great job of it. So look forward to working with you. The only other comment I've got is 12 years ago, I sat on this committee, and I think the first forest briefing I came to was Jackie Buchanan.
I think so,
And
sir.
I would like to thank you for the long support you've given the state of Wyoming and this body for being good to work with. We've seen all different kinds of people from all different agencies, and I've got to tell you, you've been one of the best friends the state of Wyoming's had. You do your job, and you do it with grace, and we, at least for my end of it, I very much appreciate the access and ability we've had to work with you folks at Region. So with that, I thank you. I hope you guys realize what you have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, well, ladies, we know that we're in good hands with you at the helm. We look forward to working with you, and so unless you have further comments, that will conclude our briefing, and we thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chairman Simon.
Yes, we look
Thank you.
forward to working with you.